Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. Welcome to this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Good, and today we're exploring one of corporate America's most fascinating companies, Burns McDonnell. They're an engineering and construction firm that has over 12,000 employees, which are owners. Today, joining me is Jim Facinelli, head of learning and development, who spent over 25 years designing world-class leadership programs, and Tyler Kerkmann, their talent development strategist who specializes in aligning business strategy with learning to drive measurable results. Today, we're going to be diving deep into what they have done in terms of their leadership development and explore how they've built one of the industry's most respected leadership pipelines while maintaining their unique culture across over 70 offices worldwide. Welcome to the program, Jim and Tyler.
Thank you. Great. Pleasure to be here.
Love to start each conversation with just tell us more about your background. Could you share a bit about what brought you into your role at Burns McDonnell and why you're so passionate about learning and development? And why don't we start with you, Jim?
Okay, great. So I've been here in December will be 2 years, so not that long, but I've spent over 30 years now working in what I would broadly call the talent development and human performance space. And so I've had 4 phases to my career. I started early on, the first 10 years with Accenture doing human performance, process improvement, and then talent development related work for them. And then all the things I loved about consulting became the things that were challenging of travel and the new clients and all. And I was starting to start a family and said, okay, I got to pick a different path career wise. So then I went into retail and spent a good part of that next decade with Payless Shoe Source. And that's actually where I first met Brendan Dowd and yourself and others with IMS. So I got familiar with them. And so I've had a relationship with IMS for over 20 years and was there for about 8 years. Also did some work with H&R Block in the retail space. And then from there, moved into more of the financial services insurance space. So I spent some time with Lockton in a talent development, organizational development role. And then most recently switched into the architecture, engineering, and construction space. So I was with another firm prior to coming to Burns McDonnell. So I was with them for 2 years and then had the opportunity to come here. And it's been a great role for me, and I've really enjoyed the impact that we've been able to have in the short time that I've been here.
Thank you, Jim. And Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thanks, Charles, for having us. Jim and I really appreciate the opportunity. And again, thank you for the award that we received. It's always fun hearing from Jim because I think he brings so much expertise to our team, and maybe 2 years sounds short, but I think he's made 10 plus years of impact already. And I've not been here much longer. I've been at Burns McDonnell for close to 3 years in January, but it has been an amazing 3 years. I have about over 10 years of experience in talent development, and you could say I had kind of an untraditional career path. I didn't really go to college immediately out of high school. I started working working at AMC theaters. I became a food and beverage manager and quickly learned that training is one of those ways you can get teenagers to actually do things you need them to do, and which is very difficult. I'm sure if you have teenagers in your life, you understand. So I had to learn very quickly, like, how do I engage them? And so I learned principles of training early on, and then moved into financial services, did wealth management advising, and then started talent development in a financial services institution, and then kind of made my way over to Burns McDonnell, which has been fantastic. So I have a CPTD certification from ATD, as well as human performance improvement certification. So it's been really awesome to kind of use those principles and a lot of those concepts in the real world and to see how they apply. How do you work with stakeholders? How do you build programs? How do you do skill development? And I've been very fortunate to have a career that so far has been very rich.
Well, thank you for providing that background, both of you. And yes, once again, congratulations on the IMS Leadership Excellence Award. It really showcases what you're doing for that learning and development at Burns McDonnell. And yeah, there
if you're
you
wondering,
go,
for those that are wondering, what does it look like? Like, well, here it is. This is it. We just received it in the mail yesterday.
Very nice. It's very nice. Almost mid-century modern looking.
Well, Tyler, talk to me about the employee ownership model. It sounds fascinating. What excites you most about supporting leadership growth and development at Burns McDonnell, especially in your role?
Well, generally what excites me the most is an easy answer. It's our people. Our people are leagues of their own. The employee ownership model is kind of this undercurrent. When you start at a company like ours, because we're not unique in being an employee-owned company, there's lots of them out there and lots of them have ESOPs, but the culture that you can tap into by having that model is what stands you out from the crowd, right? And I think Burns McDonnell has done a fantastic job of really latching on to, we come into work every single day to serve our clients and to better each other. And that community that we've created has been centered around the passion that our engineers, our architects, our scientists, all of our STEM professionals have. And it is an absolute honor, I think, for myself to wake up every day and to be able to help and support them in their career journeys, because really, truly, the AEC industry is fascinating altogether, right? We're seeing a lot of opportunity within this space. There's a lot of investment coming from different sides of the government, whether that's federal, whether that's state, whether that's defense. We're seeing a lot of that infrastructure investment into kind of energy and water, and data centers are a huge area. And we play in all of those. As an employee-owned company, we have professional service engineers that build data centers, to work in utilities. And going back to your original question, what excites me is I get to talk to those people. I get to go to work every day and talk to people about these projects and help them unleash their own talents in different ways that they didn't think was possible. I'm already working with very intelligent people, and to see these little light bulb moments with them, I'm like, okay, I really feel like I have meaning in my work and what I do.
I love that, Tyler. And I'm so excited about how you're developing leaders who understand that their success is directly tied to everyone else's success. And like you mentioned, there's lots of employee-led companies, but one of the stats that I found was your turnover rate is so much lower compared to the industry average. And that's not just about compensation, because the leaders create these environments where people want to stay and grow. So, Jim, speak to me more about that and how that works at Burns and McDonnell.
It's critical and central to our strategy to, as Tyler alluded to, but to build on that, a little context as well. Our firm is 128 years old. It was founded in 1898. And when I first learned that, I was just blown away by what that must mean. And we have some client relationships that span almost that whole time. So it's just a different dynamic compared to retail and some other industries that I've experienced. But that is central to why that culture is what it is, because our workforce model is very based on hire people early in their careers, maybe straight out of college, and then incent them through career growth and other opportunities and really interesting work to stay here. So our CEO, 30 plus years with the firm, our chief operating officer, 37 years with the firm, essentially never worked anywhere else. And you see that a lot throughout the leadership. And that gives us a stability that people you can lean on and people can count on. The other thing that I think that the leaders do a really good job of here, unlike almost anywhere else I've ever worked, is they really make you feel cared for. And so there's a very intentional emphasis by our leaders at all levels of they have a responsibility to those that they lead, to create, to nurture that environment, to create that growth and those opportunities for those people, and to provide them feedback and kind of coaching and support in ways that I've not experienced in every environment that I've worked in. And that was all certainly before Tyler and I got here. So that was baked into the culture. I think where we've gotten traction more on the talent development front is there was a sort of a naivete around, you mean we can structure our efforts around this? You mean we can actually have intention and have programs that drive and accelerate the things that we already know are valuable? And so that's why we've had so much packed in such a short time, because they were sort of ready for us. They just didn't realize there were professionals that had expertise in this space that could really accelerate what they were trying to do at scale across our 12,000 plus people.
Thank you for providing
Charles, if I could add to that too. I just want to say what's really fascinating about Burns and McDonnell is you don't have 125 years of success accidentally, right? Like there's been a lot of intentionality around how do we mentor, how do we have more of an apprenticeship model in this business versus maybe kind of traditional development, the way we think about it as talent development professionals. And that's really what they have focused on, is how do I keep that pipeline of talent coming into the business from turn to new grad to kind of assistant level to associate level folks, and keeping them engaged, connected, learning from each other. I mean, it is astonishing to see the natural, organic learning and development culture that already exists in an organization like this.
That makes me just one other thing. One of the sort of philosophies that we've introduced in our short time here has been this, we're taking from this 70-20-10 thinking, right? That talks about, for those that aren't familiar, that based on research, only 10% of people's developmental benefits as they reflect back on their career is based in formal education. And then 20% of that is really other people, coaches, mentors, your boss, your clients, the teams you lead, the feedback from those people. And then the rest is just doing work, right? Just experiencing the job, taking on different roles, all those things. And to Tyler's point, they've always been good at the other parts. They just never, they didn't know about the 10%. If it's only 10%, why would we do that? And so our rebuttal there is, it's the force multiplier for the 20 and the other. Like, that's what gets you the other benefits or accelerates that. So a lot of what we focus on in our leadership programs is, how do you as a leader be a better coach? How do you be more intentional and armed with techniques and strategies to develop your people in a structured way? And then how do we share those skills across the whole organization in a formalized, grammatic approach? And that was just very new to the organization.
I think you're right that 70-20-10, people feel like the 10% is not that impactful because it's only 10% of the overall training. But you're right. It's that force multiplier that makes the other pieces even more beneficial and have greater impact as a result. How do you really identify those leadership development opportunities in an employee-owned company that requires sometimes a different approach than a more traditional corporate model?
What I would say about that is, we've had to strike a balance, to your point, between what is central to success of the firm, what is central to the success of leaders in the firm, and then how do we sort of meet them where they are. So we are, for a firm as old and as large as we aren't as rigid from a process perspective. There's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit throughout our business. At some levels, run like 12 separate businesses by industry segments and those types of things. So it's like, how do you encourage that level of autonomy, yet find some commonality in what it is that we're trying to do from a culture perspective and obviously from a leadership perspective? So we try to bring some structure, but not too much, to how we engage leaders. And we really focus on pretty tried and true kind of principles around things like trust. Like, how do you make sure with those that you lead that you do things to encourage and establish trust? How do you communicate effectively with those that you lead? How do you set a vision and direction for the team so that they can align around a common purpose? So a lot of what we focus on from a principles perspective are things like that. I think what we've done, and Tyler's really been central to this, is we've made those things more overt. We kind of put them on paper. We drew connection to, why are we doing this activity or in this class? How does it tie to a MAC culture principle? How does it tie to our culture? Why is it important to the success of the firm? So we try to really connect dots for people in the approaches that we take.
Did you want to add anything, Tyler, to that?
The only thing I would really add is, a lot of times when it comes to kind of cultures of leaders and what the business is doing, I think talent development professionals, and I have succumbed to this quite often, will jet out from what is already happening in the business, thinking that there's a lot of best practices that talent development professionals know about, and we need to focus on this. So trust or communication or relationship building, trying to some of the things that even Jim just mentioned. I often find more success in aligning to what leadership is already expecting and having success in that space. And so for us, it was trying to understand from leadership what makes a quality leader at the organization. Yes, we have these core values. Yes, we have an end of year performance evaluation. Yes, we have job descriptions. At the end of the day, when you've been here for 30 plus years, you're not necessarily thinking of all those things when you think about a leader. You're kind of ingrained in this business, you know the clients, you know what your goals are. And so it took us some time to really understand from them, hey, what does success really look like? And we had a light bulb moment when our new CEO took the helm, and there was this conversation around leadership development. And we remember this moment where she says, we really need people to know is how our business operates. How do they need to make decisions about our business? How do they need to understand from the AEC industry what risk is and the decisions around risk, and what kind of contracts do we or not negotiate within those confined spaces? It wasn't just the people or maybe the leaders that are going to be handling those moments, but it's all of us. If you're going to be a leader at this firm, you need to have a general understanding of what we do as a business. And when our business is complex, that has 10 kind of business lines, from utilities to water treatment to data centers and food and beverage, you need to be able to understand the general consensus when it comes to engineering and construction around all of what we do. So it took a little bit of time to truly understand, what is my role as a talent development professional? Is it leaning on maybe what made me feel safe in the moment? I'm going to focus on coaching. I'm going to focus on delegation and feedback. Or do I need to really open up my mind to, I need to help facilitate more of this level of development, because that's what they think is important for leaders in this organization. And maybe I need to take a step back from what I think is best from a talent development perspective and really hear what they're saying.
That's an important point that you made, Tyler, because you're right. Burns McDonnell is so broad in what it does. So it really speaks to trying to identify what strategies do you prioritize to create and maintain a strong leadership pipeline. So talk to me a little bit more about that, Jim, just with what Tyler said. How do you condense it down to those critical few? Because you can't be effective in all those areas at one time.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we've really tried to address that at levels in the organization. And as diverse and entrepreneurial as we are, there is some sort of common structure that's layered across that. And the way I would describe it to get a general understanding is that we have what I would call designation levels. This is not unique to us, but we lean on this a lot for how we structure our programs. So at different levels in the organization, so as an example, what I would call probably senior manager generically, maybe director level, we have what we would call an associate level. So it's an associate designation. To build on that, from there, we go to what I would call a principal designation, which is probably more senior director to vice president in a generic sense across the industry. And then our top 1% of our leaders are officers in the organization. So unlike a publicly traded company where an officer, very specific roles and those things, it's more of a general designation layered across to include our most senior officer or executives. And so what we've tried to focus on is, what are the responsibilities, to Tyler's point, that you have to running the business? So you may run a location. So maybe you're the head of our Atlanta regional office, as an example. And you may have to know, to Tyler's point about those 10 lines of business, I may have to know all 10, because I may have all 10 operating in my operation in Atlanta. Versus, do I lead one of those lines of business, or what we would call a global practice? Okay, well, I have to have more depth just in power generation or oil and gas or whatever that is. How is that different? But what's common in those, what's commonly required of each of those people in those roles? And then that's where we focus. The other thing that we've really helped the organization be more intentional about is a high potential element of that. So what is kind of foundational that if you're a department manager for us, you just have to have it, basic training essentially. But what is it when we say of that population, who are the high potential people that we think have that astronaut right stuff to maybe become a principal? So how do we identify those people? And then how do we focus additional development on those people? And so the other thing that we've really helped the organization bring some structure to is really succession. It's just to be more overt and intentional about, all right, what is the growth of the business? What are the retirements and things that impact organizations? How do we get ahead of that? Be thoughtful about what do we need to do to prepare people to move into some of these senior roles? And that's, again, where the 70-20-10 thinking is beneficial around, yes, there's executive development, and we run a program for each of those levels I spoke to. But what are roles that we should make sure they get the opportunity to play that'll prepare them to take a larger role? And so when you hear a lot of our senior leaders talk today, they talk about, well, gosh, back when I came up, we were a third the size. And that a lot of that growth just happened naturally. We were mostly in Kansas City. We just walked down the hall and I could talk to different businesses and I get opportunities to work in those businesses. Well, now, to your point, we're across 70 some offices in 10 countries, and you have to orchestrate that happening, where before we didn't have to. And I think Tyler and I and others coming into the organization and helping them see, you're bigger than that now. It's not just happening organically the way it used to when you came through the organization. So it's like, once you have that realization, but don't panic, we can do things structurally to help you orchestrate that. And so there's been a lot of movement in that activity over the last 2 years as well.
Well, and having more of a deliberate approach, right, I think really helps that. And And I bet you've also learned how to leverage your own employee ownership model as a recruitment and a retention tool, because when high potential individuals, I've seen this myself, see that leadership development here means building something they're going to own, not just advancing someone else's agenda, it attracts a different caliber of leader.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. We lean a lot on what is the responsibility as a leader you have to the next generation. And part of that is to continue to create opportunities for people and make sure that you take care of this place.
Tyler?
I'll add on to some of what I would focus on is the way that we partner with the business. So when we unleash a lot of these programs, and Jim, help me stay honest here, a lot of it is in tandem with the business.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning we don't do a lot of hiring outside. Yes, we have our pockets where we'll bring in experts. Yes, we have our kind of facilitators that will sort of come in here and there. But across maybe 4 corporate programs that each have about 4 sessions, so you can like 16 sessions in total, we maybe have 2 to 3 external speakers. So what does that mean? How do we fill that content? That means we fill that content with the experts that are here within the organization. We tap in to the knowledge, the skills that they have as senior level executives, maybe vice presidents or general managers out in our regions. And we say, hey, we want you to come in and we want you to talk about trust, or we want you to talk about leading this client. We want to talk about how you built this business. And we really tap into the knowledge that's already circulating in the business. And what that does is it helps build up those relationships that are very critical to the success of our people, right? So they see someone from Atlanta come in that's running a business that's been here for 20 years, and they get to hear from that person on what they have found to be successful in their leadership. And then they get to ask them questions, they get to talk with them. So we're building these connections and we're relying on people's expertise to bring all of that home. And I think that is one of the underlying currents within our strategy that really drive development. The business helps us with our application process through our high potential program, where we send out applications to the whole company. If you meet this criteria, you can apply for our leadership program. They vet those through a blind application process. We have people then mentor from other programs where we ladder those down. So if you were in this program, we're asking you to mentor this program. We're asking you to come speak at this program. And so we've really been intentional about how can we build relationships and build connections across the organization through what we're doing today.
What are some of the biggest challenges for leadership development in your industry? The engineering and construction industry faces some unique leadership development challenges. And how is Burns McDonnell really adapting to address them? I didn't know if you wanted to start, Tyler, and then Jim can add.
So there's a lot of conversation happening in the tech space about the competition between Google and Meta and the AI companies of wanting these top scientists that are good software engineers that can do these immense calculations and softwares that are going to change really the way we live. I mean, we're experiencing that now with the AI revolution. Well, all of that on the back end, right? What's happening is now the engineers, the architects, the scientists, the people who permit land for those data centers, now all of those people, all of their skills are in high demand. So we're seeing a very big influx of competition between AEC firms for top talent. And what we have on our side is our employee ownership. And we do a fantastic job of talking about employee ownership in a way that retains our talent. And what we try to do is create opportunities where an organization of 12,000 people doesn't maybe feel as big or as complex. Going back to Jim's point earlier on the history of our organization, we grew very rapidly. We had double-digit growth numbers year over year. And so when you see an organization go from 4,000 people to 12,000 people and what almost feels like overnight, it's about how do you maintain that connection amongst people that really helps even intern or new grad engineers know that this is a place where I belong. This is a place where I can see my career growth. This is a place where I can see I can make a big, huge impact to the world. When we think about maybe data centers, those are very attractive, right? Everyone's excited about that. It's a really cool new thing, but we work on substations. And so there's a story that our CEO tells of a substation down in Houston when it got flooded. It got wrecked and damaged. Well, that substation was powering a nearby children's hospital. So now do you see where our work matters? And so that utility CEO reached out to us and as a client was like, hey, we need help making this better. We don't want this to happen again. So we went to work and we put our best and brightest on it, and we're known for solving the world's toughest challenges. Next flood, the CEO sent a picture of the water resistance and the walls and the engineering designs that we had done to make sure that substation was resilient and it withstood.
Wow.
And so now people can see, yeah, we're engineers, yeah, we're architects, yeah, we're professional services people, but we make a very big impact on the world, and that's the story we tell our people, and it's the story we want them to tell, rather, so that way we can really make sure the story is getting out.
Powerful story, Tyler. Jim, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, the other thing I would add to that is a lot of the value that our small team has been able to add to the organization is in helping them get value from those stories. But how do you frame that differently to help the next generation of leaders, help them understand, wow, that's the impact I can have here? Or people from outside that we're trying to recruit into the organization. How do I help them understand some of the impacts of those stories and what it means to have an ownership stake in a firm that has that kind of.
That's so critical. I see that in so many high-performing organizations, building that storytelling culture and connecting it to the why, right? Here's why my job matters versus just having them feel like nothing really is happening as a result of what they're doing. Talk to me about partnering now with IMS, the Institute for Management Studies. That's supported Burns McDonnell for many years in developing its leaders. What impact do you think this partnership has had on the leadership development of Burns McDonnell?
To answer that question, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about our overall talent development strategy.
Love it.
And so we've really anchored that approach based on my history and what I've learned over the years of doing this type of work around 4 major things. One is, how do you make sure that you have the right content and knowledge captured? And I'm going to come back to that one because that's a central space where IMS helps us a lot. But how do you either source the best in the world external content, or how do you capture the knowledge that's walking around in your experts' heads so that you can then provide that information to people that benefits their performance? So that's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 then becomes what I was alluding to. Now that you've captured that or sourced it, how do you get it to people? It's one thing to go, we have this great knowledge, but yeah, we only offer it once a month in a live session. So how do you leverage technology largely? How do you have different approaches, different techniques, different programs that are targeted toward the benefits of different populations? And then once you've done that, so you've got the content, you've made it easy to access, but does anybody know about it? That's the other thing that I think people overlook a lot of times is you might have great programming and great offerings to help people, but if they're not aware that that's even an option for them to take advantage of, then it doesn't help that much. So we have a lot of focused effort on how do we market the programs that are available, the resources that are available to people that we provide, but also what are the sound bites and the stories around, like, gosh, I went to this class and I was able to perform at this level or have this impact on the team that I lead. How do we kind of capture that and sort of share those stories as well? And then lastly, how do you measure the impact you're having? So we are very anchored in performance. At the end of the day, whether it's leadership or more technical skill or whatever that is, business development, what have you, we want to be measurable and show impact of offerings and programs can provide to the organization. So that's high level how we focus across all areas. Now, specific to leadership, what we try to do is, again, partner with the business, align to specific populations. They're what you might guess they are. They're people leader roles like section manager, department manager, but also project manager, as you might imagine, right? We deliver projects. That's largely what we do. And so knowing those populations and then understanding what is it that they really do every day and what is their environment, what's happening around them as they're doing those things. And then how do you make these resources available to them and impact them in ways that are actually beneficial, they're timely, they can create habits to apply those things consistently going forward. That's really the way we try to approach that challenge.
With your employee ownership model, with the MAC culture principles, they're unique, but leadership principles and fundamentals are universal. And I'm love to see how IMS helps to stay connected to those broader leadership development trends and to ensure your leaders have both those specialized skills that are unique to your environment, but also foundational competencies needed to succeed in any context. Tyler? Did you want to add anything to that?
When we as an organization look at leaders across the span of the enterprise, one of those designations that we give to people is called associate. So a lot of times we hear this in a job title, so it maybe seems like it's an associate data scientist, but here it's more of like we see you as the frontier leadership line within our organization. You know, people get promoted to leadership around age 30, but they don't get really their first leadership development until around age 42, right? And there's that big gap. What it reminds me of is almost this spousal effect where our people in our organization, it's almost like we're married to them and they don't want to hear from us. They don't want our feedback. You think about your spouse back, you know, it's not time for feedback, right? And so what we do with IMS, and shout out to Sue or someone on our internal team and Brendan at IMS who's been helping with this for years, is we go, okay, great. So now that you've reached this designation, we want you to step outside of our walls and just go hear from other people. And IMS does a fantastic job of creating a catalog of options for our folks to look at, and then they can go in person, they can go online. And basically what they come back with is, so other people outside of our walls are talking about this, and there's experts in areas of uncertainty and how to approach conflict or how to build trust. So now that you're hearing this from someone else, right now, a friend or a neighbor, going back to my spouse analogy, let's talk about how we can build on that. And so that's our opportunity internally, is to say, hey, let's take the good nuggets from what we're learning in IMS and start to build on those by maybe having some lunch and learn, some regroups, some opportunities to continue collaborating and learning with each other. And I think that's really the beauty of the partnership between our two organizations.
Thank you for providing that, Tyler. Before we wrap up, I'd love for one or both of you to share a specific leadership development initiative that you are particularly proud of or excited about at Burns and McDonnell.
You go first, Tyler. I know you have many.
There's too many.
There's several, I'm proud to say, on your behalf. Yes.
I will say there's one near and dear to my heart. There is a program that we started when I first joined. I was 2 weeks into my role here at Burns McDonnell, and I was invited to a meeting, sitting across from a gentleman, a big oak desk. I'm on the highest floor of our corner office, and I'm just like, I don't really know what's going on, I'll just be honest with you. And it was Paul Fisher, our Chief Operating Officer, who wanted to start a program for are people from 5 to 8 years of experience across the whole company. Had not done before. My human performance training kicks in. I'm like, what goals do you want? What do you want them to achieve? How do we measure success? And he just stops me and he's like, the success is that they build relationships. And I go in my head, how do I measure that? How do I measure relationships? And it was one of those defining moments where I really had to change how I approach talent development. So I'm very proud of this program. It's called 𝗵𝗲. It's a nationwide program where we solicit out applications. We work with leaders from every lane of the business to mentor. We have an executive sponsorship committee, and then they have 4 sessions over the course of a year and a capstone project. But through year over year, we've had, first year was 400 applications. Then we had 300 to 300, and we only take 50. So it's a highly competitive program. A lot of people, when you work for a top tier company like Burns and McDonnell, wonder, why did I not get in? And so we have to really support the ongoing development and nurture that forward. And we just finished our last session this year, and we had one gentleman share openly to the class, I applied every single year, and I did not get in the first 2 years. And then I applied this year and I got in, and I'm so proud of myself, and I'm so ready to give back to the organization. And I want to spearhead what it means to be a leader and give to our new grads and our interns. And it's one of those that I guess I get goosebumps thinking about, because it's pulling us all together. It's talking about what makes a leader, and it's challenging them in ways that I don't think they knew were coming. And it's seeing the cross collaboration of so many business lines, so many people come together. So I would say it's definitely a proud one for me.
Yeah, that's definitely one of our strongest programs, and Tyler's been central in the development from day one, as he spoke to, in partnership with the COO, who is actively helps facilitate the program, and it's just been wildly successful for us in our short time here. The other, I'll actually mention 2, but I'll go deeper on one. One, we actually just finished this week. We had what historically have called Principals Day. It's now called the Principals Experience. because it's multi-day now. The centerpiece of it is a day-long program that we help provide where the top 400 leaders in the organization, every officer and every principal globally comes in for this meeting. What we're able to do there and has really evolved with our efforts is, again, what's our intention here? And what I've helped the organization think more specifically about is, what do you want them to do and how do you want them to feel? And then how do we be intentional about how we're trying to touch those goals with different things? And so it's a day-long program where we bring in some external motivational speakers. We engage them in lots of activity. We had a session that engaged this population at one time. What's it mean to be an AI-driven leader? How do we need to think differently about that? We'll do live poll sessions and different things to make it very interactive. And it is just wildly successful around their opportunity to kind of congregate for one day all together, have a shared experience, and really leverage that going forward. So that's a more recent one. Probably among, if not the most impactful program that we run in the leadership space is one that we call Ascend. And Tyler, again, is the lead on this as well. That's that associate population, high potential program for a subset of those people. And it is a 4-session program, so essentially 1 session a quarter. And it is literally co-led by our CEO and our COO. They teach all 4 sessions. They are there 100% of the time. They are active, as you might imagine, in the setting of the agenda and the content and who we pick for the speakers. All of those speakers, I think we do have some clients come and speak, but besides that, it's all internal leaders across different parts of our business, from project delivery to business development to different aspects. And so it's about 30 people from across the business, and we are extremely proud of it. The level of sponsorship and involvement and engagement we have from the very top executives in the organization. I've never, in my 33-year career, I've never seen that to that level this consistently. So again, it's one we're definitely proud of.
Love those examples, and it just showcases all that you're doing to develop leaders and making an impact and a difference. Thank you so much for sharing. As we wrap up today, is there any advice that you would give other organizations looking to strengthen their leadership development programs?
I would say really probably the central success for us has really been anchored around the sponsorship that we've enjoyed. So engage those senior leaders in formulating what the strategy should be. What should the areas of emphasis be? What are the levels and the populations that you want to target for what you're trying to do? I have found that oftentimes there's a sentiment that is, those people are busy. Don't bother them with training a class, or they don't want to do that. What I find overwhelmingly is they want to do that. They are starved for the opportunity to go into a room of young leaders and engage with those people and learn from them, but also impart some wisdom and experience for those folks. And so don't be afraid of that. Lean in, reach out to those people. And I will tell you, more often than not, you'll find that they are very active and willing to be active in those efforts, for sure.
Thank you, Jim. Tyler, any wisdom that you want to impart?
Yeah, I would just say, in part with what Jim is saying, there's always going to be, as a talent development professional, your kind of upline leadership, and how do you kind of meet their expectations and what they're looking for. And what I found is swinging to both ends of the pendulum won't really be as beneficial, right? So the pendulum being just business leaders and just business sponsorship, or just your upline leadership and just their thoughts and opinions. It's bringing those two together that is really where you see the enterprise results that you're looking for. And what I mean by that is, we talk about programs like Principles and Ascend and Amplify. We did not get any of those to be where they are today without bringing both of those sides together and listening to what each other will really want and being the bridge to make that happen. And so when you're engaging with your sponsors, it's trying to uncover really, how do they think? How do they learn? What are resources that they use? And so it just took us thinking outside the box, listening, relying on our kind of expertise and technical training as talent development professionals, but also knowing when to bend that, when to flex that, when to make sure that we're meeting the business for what they need. But I'd also say, I think our industry as a talent development professionals can be confusing not a lot of people know what we do. Not a lot of people understand the value we bring to the organization. And so don't lose sight of that. Make sure you tell your own story. Make sure that you're sharing the impact that you're making in the organization. We're not a critical business function, meaning we're not payroll. We're not benefits. And so when people think about us, it's what value are we creating?
Well, thank you both. This has been absolutely fascinating of two individuals that are really making a difference in this industry. And I love the way Burns McDonnell has integrated employee ownership with exceptional leadership development. It really demonstrates how organizational structure and culture can create unique competitive advantages in developing its leaders. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me today. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you if they want to learn more about your work and have a conversation that extends beyond this interview.
Yeah, absolutely. So my email, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 at burnsmcd.com. That's probably the easiest way to get hold of me. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. So I would be happy to, engage with anybody who has interest in some of the work that we're doing. That's the main way to get a hold of me.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say LinkedIn for me. I'm on there regularly or just kind of checking out what's going on in the industry. So you can always connect there. Happy to have conversations and chat. So definitely reach out if anyone has questions or wants to collaborate.
Thank you both again for joining me, and thank all of you for listening. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and keep growing those around you. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.